Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. In Buffalo, we would say Happy Dingus Day because that is the traditional post Easter Monday where everybody, I guess, I don't know, it's a Polish holiday, and all I know is it's associated with eligible single women brushing up against single men with pussy willows. I don't know what that means other than it's a way. It's a courting.
This is the HockeyBuzzcast. We got to be every Monday through Friday.
We're doing
this is HockeyBuzzcast after dark. Except Mike checked the time and it's 1 p.m.
I didn't
not
say
1 a.m.
I didn't say anything untoward.
No, you didn't. It was all very toward.
Yes. Okay. Russ has some pre-show, and then I have a humorous little thing.
There's an interesting thing going around. The WWE gave a note to their talent to show police that they're essential media, so that if they get stopped, they could still go in and perform. And the big question is, since somebody in the organization did test positive for the virus, and they won't say who it is, all they'll say is this person's at home and it didn't affect anybody, and we're all going to have to just believe that, right? But at the end of the day, now when they're giving notes like that, they need to shut it down. I don't understand what Vince McMahon's problem is here. I get it. Everybody's going to lose money. But at the end of the day, I think he's putting his wrestlers at risk. And I think there's probably a lot of them that don't want to do it at this point. If you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're implementing any kind of testing, and I know I did.
Well, they say they're, locking it down, whatever that means. Nobody goes into any specifics, so you don't know.
Well, the funny thing is that on the one hand, we have first the UFC trying to push through things, and they get shut down probably by ESPN. Now the WWE is trying to forge forward with whatever they're trying to do, but it sounds like they could get shut down unless, Vince, moves it to states that are friendly in terms of not having any kind of quarantine situation. But then on the other hand, Russ, we have talks about Major League Baseball and the NBA. There was Brian Windhorst came out with something about the NBA getting back in action sooner than we thought. And they, at this point, had been the one that seemed to be the most cautious, but now it's starting to sound like they're trying to ramp things up as well.
Yeah, I guess what I think's happening here is because things have, extended, they're trying to keep people engaged, but, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
If you're in business or otherwise, right, everybody's in the same boat. And I just don't think there's any advantage to just coming out and saying stuff like that unless we get not an all clear. You're never going to get an all clear, especially from the top of the government.
You won't get that before. You won't get that probably until at who knows, God.
Right, it'll be a long time, but you need to at least get an idea that
probably his fault.
Things are going the other way. It's getting better. We don't have that yet, and that's why I don't understand why any of this discussion's going on. Honestly, it really shouldn't be.
Now, I think Hockey Buzz and myself should file a lawsuit against the NFL because Roger Goodell is going to be hosting the NFL draft from his basement in I think Bronx. I think he lives
Bronxville.
Bronxville, yeah. not the Bronx, but Bronx.
Blogger of him.
Yeah, it's like right, exactly. It's like I think he's obviously been watching the Buzzcast and he's ripping us off, so we should sue his ass.
I actually never, it's funny, this whole thing, when we were starting off as bloggers, in the mainstream media, that was the whole joke all the time. You do it from your basement, and you can write, you write your stuff in your underwear. And then I remember Kevin Allen, who was like, obviously king of the mainstream media, one time defending me and saying, well, first of all, he doesn't do it in the he doesn't work in his basement. But if you can work in your underwear, isn't that the dream for all of us?
I have an update too. I just saw on Twitter. So airlines are still working, right? I don't know why anybody would use them.
It's insane. You can fly to wherever you want to now for $20.
Except you might get quarantined when you get off.
No, for sure. It's a huge
right. You're getting one trip in and that's it, and you're stuck wherever you're going to
be. There was serious thought about I'm like, well, what we should do? We should just take the family to Arizona, someplace where it's completely where it's warm,
I'm
less likely to get this thing.
I'm wondering whether the airline.
I checked it. You could get the Arizona for it was like $39 round trip a piece for the four of us. So it would have been like $160 to fly a family of four to and from that Arizona.
Well, okay.
What I was actually going to say is I saw a tweet from Jerry Lawler, who does the WWE's tapings, and he's one of the on-air talents. One of the on-air talents is the one who came down with the virus, who hasn't been on lately.
Right.
He's 70 years old, so he's flying with a mask on. The mask is not going to be enough.
Right.
See, this is the problem that I think
it doesn't keep it. It doesn't prevent you from getting it. It keeps you from giving it the potential.
So follow me, Anthony. You have a scientific mind. So Lawler's going to walk in for the taping.
That's an accusation, by the way.
Yeah, he's going to walk in for the taping from after being in an airport, and even though the company says they have it locked down, there's no guarantee because you got this guy flying.
Well, I'm wondering whether the airlines are operating under the same principle that we did when I worked at the movie theaters years ago. When we had like one or two people in the theater, we would give them a pass to come back at another time because it cost us more in terms of electricity.
They can't do that.
To run the projector for 2.5 hours and have employees there than to have them stay and have their own private screening.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? I'm sure it costs thousands of dollars in fuel and things of that nature.
Yeah, it does.
So why would they fly if there were like 4 people on the plane?
One of the things they're doing, I know somebody who works in that business, is like what's happening more than any ever before right now is, people are ordering stuff to be delivered to them, right? So there's a huge amount of boxes going, and a lot of the airlines are renting out their planes.
So they're putting those on the plane.
Like things going around, like something's going to Philly or whatever. That's why in the beginning, if you went on Amazon, your normal like next day or 2-day delivery was like a week or 2 weeks. Now it's like 5 days because they're starting. The airplanes are like,
we're definitely getting our packages more now in a quicker window. But then again,
and a lot of that has to do with the airlines renting out their space in planes.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I've also noticed, like, coming out, because I live near the Buffalo airport, the planes that like FedEx or other companies use are usually older planes.
Yeah,
engines are louder. You recognize that plane taking off as opposed to a regular passenger airline. And they've doubled up the flights of FedEx and the other carriers out of the Buffalo airport because everybody's sending for things. So
I just think flying's such a risk right now. And then you've got an at-risk guy for a broadcast that they say is locked down. And I'm saying, I don't know, man. I don't know how much longer they should keep that going because.
Well, one final thing before we start the show, somebody tweeted out there's a protest going on in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah, there's this guy, I don't know, this reporter.
Yeah.
Who's not exactly reporting on the thing. He's basically if you read it, he basically sounds like he's one of the ringleaders of
he's whipping.
Which immediately, as soon as you do that as a reporter, you're out. I have no time for you.
Don't make yourself the story.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy's making himself the story. He's got his nice shiny aviator glasses on, and the way the question phrasing, it's just like, bud.
He's whipping it up. So
he's whipping it up to get attention for himself is what he's doing.
Obviously, Anthony, we now know what happened to the rioters from 2011. It's the people who are following this idiot.
Oof.
But anyway,
I was there for that. Russ was there for that. It was crazy. All right. Let's get going. I got lots of time travel to talk about today. Lots of alternate realities. I've got 3 nights of alternate reality games.
Nice.
Okay, Doctor Who.
Yeah, no, I mean
you have to fill me in on where we're at with the series because when I was last on, the Flyers got shut out 3-0 by the Penguins.
They played twice more, so we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
They played Friday night. They played yesterday afternoon. Yes, that was pretty something.
Wait, so they played it back of Friday and yesterday afternoon, was it?
Yeah, they played Friday.
They're not playing on Easter. They're not playing on
back-to-backs. No, they played. No, there have been games on Easter, and they definitely played on Easter. Yeah, there definitely have been hockey games on Easter. No questions asked.
I know. Just kidding.
All right, let's get going. Here we go. The date is the 13th. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, April 13th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm the Don of the Gray Sweater Mafia.
I'm Anthony Majoni, apparently wearing the red shirt today.
Ruthcombe from Sportsology, still missing Schitt's Creek, wearing my gear.
Oh, man. And I'm Eklund proving that I was the same size in 4th grade because I think this shirt is from 4th grade.
But if you weighed that much in 4th grade, it explains why they gave you that number.
Yeah. Jeez, right.
Wow.
Well, it's an offensive lineman number.
I know.
I was a freshman quarterback, man, on my high school team.
Or a kicker in the 1950s. But
Right. No, but anyway, you're watching HockeyBuzzcast, HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And to start off with, before we get into my alternate reality stuff, which I know everyone is just dying to find out, there's very, very mixed reviews about it, so I'm not sure how long to go with it, but I'm going to stay with it for now. But before we go there, I wanted to talk about, I talked to a source today, and like you said, Russ, beforehand, why would you give people hope and stuff like that right now? But I was, trying to find out what I could from my NHL guy that I was talking to there, and he said to me, and he was very honest. He's like, we don't have any idea, but he said, but there are like 9 or so different scenarios we're working out, and the one that's most likely is the one he sort of, I said, well, if you were to guess, you pick one that you think the most likely. I know we can't say this obviously, but this will give you a little idea of what is possible, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So here's my hopeful timeline that he gave me. The concept is in June at some point there would be a training camp, and that would be 2 to 4 weeks depending on how soon you could do it. Obviously if it's not, and the players would all be tested, all the players and personnel, by the way, would also be tested.
Right.
I'm sure if any of us are covering it, we'd have to be tested.
Right.
But they'd be very careful in June. And on July 1st, Canada Day would be the day that they would like to resume the regular season, which is would be kind of fun. That's normally UFA Day. There's something to that. I think that could be kind of cool. That would take them a month to finish the regular season, they figured. And August 5th, which is a Wednesday, the playoffs would begin with full best of 7 series. And the whole concept of this, they kept saying, was that they can do this. This is one thing he said over and over again. The NHL is willing to play out the rest of the regular season and the playoffs as long as they can award the 2019-2020 Stanley Cup in 2020, which means that it could go in. He said it could go into December. Like he said, they could actually start the next.
So therefore, we're talking about a truncated season.
Well, not truncated in terms of games, truncated in terms of
truncated for the next year, basically. Like I think the concept of the NHL in the past has had seasons that started in January. We've done it before.
Right, but they've been 48 games, and Bettman has been.
That's my point.
Right,
yeah.
Bettman has been.
And here's the reality of this. Okay, so I asked the same question you guys because I'm doing the same thing. So I said, with that, and Bettman said he wants to play the whole thing. They really feel, and Kevin kind of hinted at this too the other day. They really feel the importance of playing this regular season and this playoffs is much more important than just starting the next regular season. Because, and the reason for that, and I'll give you their reasoning for that, is that the excitement of the end of this season and the playoffs is a much more exciting thing to come back to than just, training camp and October regular season hockey, right? So
and I'm not talking strictly financially. I'm talking, I understand what you're saying in terms of bring the game back. People are hungry for anything to watch in terms of television, in terms of sports, even if it's in front of no fans, they will gobble it up.
Well, let me finish my whole scenario first, and then you can go, Mike. Okay? I'm sorry. So the whole thing goes with starting, if they were to start the playoffs on August 5th, that would get them. They figure they could be done the playoffs by August 10th. By October 10th. Okay, so you're talking about the month of September 10th. I apologize. Right. No, I'm like questioning myself. October 10th. Yeah, 2 months for the playoffs. Makes sense. Full best of 7 series.
Right.
October 10th. That is a Saturday. Then you'd have 1 week till the October 16th and 17th draft in Montreal, which would be followed by October 21st as UFA Day. And then October 25th, a 2-week camp for the 2021 season. Because most of these teams would already be playing. Their concept is that they don't need that much of a camp because these guys are already going to be in shape for the most part. Some of them will have, 2 months off if they didn't make the playoffs, but some teams will have not much more than that. And November 7th, in this reality, would be the beginning of the NHL season for 2020-21. And gives them
skipping the All-Star break, skip the bye week.
Yeah, so basically that you're starting a month later than you would in this scenario. And they think they can almost get the whole season, and this is their scenario if things are starting to free up in June that we can get that. So that's the time frame.
Now, if they go to an 82 game schedule for the next year, which I think is imperative, not only Bettman has talked about it, but in terms of revenue, because at that point you're hoping that you're going to have fans in the stands. They're going to want as many gates as they possibly can get. The problem I have here is, and I understand the NHL's desire to restart and get the regular season done, but maybe just for revenue's sake. But at a certain point, you have to throw out the regular season if you keep getting delayed and delayed and delayed to be able to go back, either go into buildings or play at nerural sites. There's a certain cutoff where you're going to say.
We say that, Mike, but that's their prerogative.
I know it's their prerogative. I know it's their prerogative, but Russ, the problem is if you're stuck on having playing 12 to 14 regular season games. First of all, the week got cut off. The season got cut off on March the 12th. So that means. We're getting an echo here. That means a little over 3 weeks. It shouldn't take a month. In this scenario, a week is big timing.
They're giving themselves 4 weeks.
Right. So they're spreading that.
They're ending. They're going to start the playoffs on a Wednesday like they normally would. So you're going to end that.
I mean, unless there is going to be no gate for these games. Nothing.
These games has already been paid. I mean, Mike, this is sure. They don't have to give money back. See, that's the whole point. Like, they don't want to give money back, like the season tickets. These already been paid. I mean, they're not going to get new tickets for some of these games, but some of them they will. I mean, some of them will. There are some teams that definitely don't want to play these games. Teams that were tanking already don't want to play these games, but that's not many teams. Really.
Oh, it's going to be a lot more than you think the second go around.
And what we're talking about here is
you can't really give me an argument that there won't be. That's a tough argument.
And Anthony,
we've got a shot at the playoffs ones to play.
Anthony, what we're talking about here is you're talking about playing regular season games, maybe not all 82, but maybe 74 or 76 to balance the schedule out, because 3 or 4 teams are within 1, 2, or 3 points, right, then just expand the playoff.
Thank you. No, you took it right out of my mouth.
Money for the regular season games, Mike. It's that these teams that have some of these teams need that gate. They need that money. Teams that aren't making the playoffs. Some of those teams that aren't making the playoffs are not good teams with great attendances. I mean, so you're looking at situations.
Right. So the Eugene Melnicks are complaining.
So here's the thing, though. You're going to open the gates. You're going to have a small group of fans probably coming in. Now the question comes down to cost of operating the arenas, of opening those things up for a relatively sparse turnout. That's my again in that respect. I'd rather rather it be a play-in scenario. At least in that case you're probably going to get those fans in the building because those games actually mean something. There might be you're selling them at least on a sliver of a chance that they get in the door.
And you're telling me and say, for example, these games are going to be played at neutral sites and not at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto or KeyBank Center in Buffalo. You're telling me that season ticket holders aren't going to be pissed off that games were played at third party sites that they had no access to. You're going to have
a lot of lost money for people. Exactly. And you're going to lose fans who were maybe on the fence with regards to renewing their tickets, although many of them probably already have done so at this point.
A lot of them probably have.
You have to be real careful, because if you're engaging in that kind of a scenario,
you're peeing in their cornflakes.
You are exactly. You are really. I think you're playing a dangerous game there.
Yeah, you are. I mean, and there's no question about that. The idea, though, is, you're weighing this is not really.
They're going to get killed on public social media.
No, in some cases, yes. I mean, but not
in most cases. The only cases that they won't are the teams that are maybe playoff bound, but still, people. If I'll give you an example,
20 of the 30 teams right now, legitimately with a playoff shot, right?
Well, it doesn't even matter. if I own season tickets
Right.
and I had no way of using them and I'm not getting my money back and they're playing at a third-party site, even if my team were making the playoffs, I am mad about the financial loss I am taking.
I didn't bring up the third-party site at all. I don't think that's an option. I don't think that's in their world.
Okay, let's say it's not a third-party site, but let's say I don't want to go and risk my health. Now I am going to lose X amount of money for whatever games. I'm not happy about that.
No, you're not. And here's what the teams would have to do. Okay, the teams would have to say, okay, they would either have to offer some sort of discount for next year's tickets, which of course,
or a credit toward next year's
credit, and say, you're going to go to these rest of these games. We're keeping your season ticket money because we need it obviously to function, to pay everybody, but we will give you a discount we'll give you a discount over the next 2 years or something they can do for season ticket holders, at least, that they can say that these games are like a bonus game, and we won't charge you for preseason games. There's that too. Okay, so there's
we won't charge you for preseason,
which we shouldn't charge you for in the first.
We shouldn't anyway.
I mean, honestly, to operate, I will say this: there's still, again, going back to my point of all the other operational costs that are involved.
Yeah.
There has to be some level of a charge for staging an event, but
those are covered by season tickets, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that price is covered. I mean, not maybe completely. Some teams might still be losing a little bit of money, but that season ticket money is already in there to pay for the buildings in those situations.
Yeah, as a Sabres season ticket holder, they usually held 3 preseason games in Buffalo, and season ticket holders got 1 preseason game for free. The other ones were essentially a la carte. You had to buy the tickets individually, and you didn't even get your season seat. So I don't know how other teams operate. I know probably Toronto you have to pay for it as part of your season ticket package. So
usually by now, I mean, I don't know when people had to get their season. I'm sure they had to get their playoff ticket money.
I think usually it's mid to late March.
They definitely got their bill.
They might not have gotten that money.
But they were getting billed right around the time that it was stopping.
Yeah.
There were teams.
There were enough people I was seeing posting about season tickets
and one more thing about the info. I seriously doubt that there's going to be a draft. No doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I doubt that it's going to be in Montreal. It's probably going to be along the lines of the NFL and what the NBA are talking about. It's a virtual draft. Montreal,
October, Mike. I mean, October 16th and 17th.
I know, but Montreal. Okay, do you think Montreal wants a half-ass draft?
No, they're not going to take it this way. They don't want.
My feeling is probably Montreal is going to get next. Well, once they have things cleared, Montreal is going to get the next draft because again, they don't announce. They wait until the current draft to tell you where the next one's going to be. So
they usually wait till the second day.
So I think what they'll do is, especially again, it is Montreal in this circumstance. I don't think it's they're not going to skip over them. So my feeling is
right
that they'll figure things out.
Yeah, they'll have a draft.
And I think it'll be whenever things are a little bit better, hopefully by 2021.
And they pretty much shot down the idea of Seattle holding the draft for 2021 because of the they have the expansion draft. I wouldn't doubt that 2021 the 2021 draft goes to maybe something like Vegas because they're going to have the NHL awards there.
I've already heard that Vegas, that Vegas was the team where they were going to go with that draft.
Right, which
was told to me as part of the scenario as well. And because exactly what you said, Mike, it's like they can do it because they're going to be. They figure the playoffs could be ending like a week or two later,
right? If
they run the scenario, so depending on how they get it done. So so it makes sense to hold it always has kind of made sense to hold the awards and the draft at the same time in a way. If you can put it in the same city, because they are really a pain in the neck to go to the awards to draft. And the draft is like really, really hard.
Right. The awards
I actually do have breaking news, a big signing. The Blackhawks signed Ian Mitchell out of Denver, University of Denver. That's a big time signing. This kid is a great defenseman, smart, scores a lot, fast.
The contract is very interesting though, Russ. What is it? Now it's something about the AAV.
It's but what they didn't specify because right now you can't sign a player for the 2019-2020 year because they don't know if they're going to have it. But you know how it is with college free agents. They want to burn that first year of the ELC. So if it's available to the Blackhawks to be able to sign him effective 19-20, they would do that. So they burn the first year. If not,
I noticed NCAA teams for football what they're doing is for basketball. Sorry, that there are players that are saying, "Hey, I am making myself available for the draft," but the NCAA is not killing their eligibility because it's all up in the air. So that's what's happening here.
Right.
But Mitchell's going to sign. I mean, the Blackhawks will use him next year for sure. And this is a big deal because he probably can play right away. Mm-hmm. Even if he's only starting on the third pairing, the kid is super smart. And so this is going to help Chicago greatly.
Better than Matt Bodie?
Yeah. He's a lot better than Bodie. Bodie was
I know.
Yeah.
I like it.
And one more thing, I might as well mention Sorokin quickly. So the first comparison I would always make for Sorokin and Shesterkin is in the 14-15 World Juniors, Shesterkin was the starter, Sorokin was the backup. Sorokin played like 3 games, but he wasn't as good. He's a really good goalie. He's going to be an excellent NHL goalie. The difference between the 2 Russian goalies is Shesterkin's a lot better with his stick. He's that guy who can make the headman pass. He's more like Brodeur with the stick. Sorokin isn't, but otherwise Sorokin is calm and really fast and smart in the net. So he's going to have a really good impact. Now, I still think there's going to be a problem figuring out how many games between him and Varlamov, because I don't care if they're friends. Friends is nice until you're competing for the same job.
Sure.
And I'd say probably in year 1, you're probably looking at Varlamov gets probably
until he gets hurt.
2/3 of the start till exactly. That's the thing. You'll have a plan. It'll be 2/3. It'll be probably 2/3 of the games of Varlamov, a third to Sorokin with health.
Right.
But as time goes on, we know that what the transitional plan will be because Sorokin's got to get used to playing on North American ice and doing certain things. My whole point was from yesterday was, my goodness, the Metro Division's young goaltending situation is ridiculously good. I mentioned 3, and then you have to account for Blackwood, Jari. You have to account for Mizhlurkins, Samsonov in Washington.
Yeah,
maybe Nedeljkovic over time, but I'm not sure. He's possible.
That's more of a long shot. Yeah,
that's more of a long shot. But the Metro is just stacked with good young goalies. Really,
and you didn't. I mean, the guy who's only 26 has won 2 Stanley Cups. And Matt Murray. So I think there's going to be a decision there by Jim Rutherford because both of them are RFAs. One, if they sign Jari and probably get him on a bridge deal, they're probably going to trade Murray because Murray's going to be looking for $5.5 to $6 million.
Then they'll get good vet. But hopefully in that case, he's going to be getting into what is his, prime of his career, so to speak.
Right.
You'll get a decent return from Murray for a team that really, really, really needs a goalie.
Right.
True. Very good point. Very good point. So the last thoughts on this and some things that people are saying in the chat room that I wanted to kind of clear up is they're all calling the NHL greedy and all this stuff, which is I get that you call them that because there are some teams that definitely are that way, but you really have to remember in the NHL that there are a lot of teams that aren't, that really legitimately do need this to survive.
Yeah,
this is not the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball. This is the NHL is still not. They still need the gates. The gates are what matters, and they need to make that money. And they're not really, teams like Florida, even the Islanders. These aren't teams that are being greedy. Remember,
the NHL only gets $200 million a year, I believe, from NBC for their television contract. That's why they're expecting to get a lot more with the new negotiations on the new deal. They need that money, and they need that money badly, and they have to play games to get that money. So they don't have the coffers that Major League Baseball or with their regional packages, or the NBA with ESPN and ABC and TNT, and the NFL with every other network on the face of the earth. So yeah, I mean, I get that. I'm just saying at a certain point in terms of time management they have to give up the regular season if this thing gets pushed into June and July. If they want to get the season done, just go to the playoffs.
Well, and like I said again, they don't want to do that. They want a regular season. They want legitimate, and they also really want to get games in every building. There's a real feeling that they wanted people to remember hockey. That's something that matters to them.
They're not getting games in MSG. It's not happening.
No, I know, but I brought that up too, and they said they fully expect that there'll be some places like California. They expect there's going to be a real problem. Gavin
Newsom has shut down California until November. November.
I think the Rangers playing.
Oh, we do have to say, Mike, that's for now. It could get lifted.
It could change, and it's actually smart that they're doing it for now. Like in my opinion, that's what they should do. They should definitely do that for now. Make sure that that's the case.
Now, before we get to our reenactments, I just wanted to mention today, and I wrote about this yesterday. Today is the 1 year anniversary, and of course, Leaf fans don't want to be reminded of this, but I had to because it's the anniversary of it, so you sort of have to mark it. 1 year ago today was Game 2 of the Boston-Toronto series, and that's the game that in the third period, Nazem Kadri slams Jake DeBrusk into the boards and gets suspended for the rest of the game, and then also gets suspended for the rest of the series. And I think that was the main contributing factor to the Leafs loss. I'm not saying solely, because obviously they had a chance to close it out in Game 6, but 2 years in a row, Kadri gets suspended. 3 games in 2018, and then for the series last year. And his future in Toronto was basically ended by the stupidity and lack of self-control of that suspension, because I'm convinced he would have probably stayed with Toronto because he had a very effective and team-friendly contract, and there would have been no reason. I mean, he was a Babcock favorite. I think he had reached a point in his career where he was not a defensive liability anymore. He was a good two-way player, and up the middle, having Tavares and Matthews and Kadri 1, 2, 3 was a weapon to use against other teams. But I do hold the officials in that game a little bit responsible, because DeBrusk neon-kneed Kadri earlier in the game. There was no call. He ran Patrick Marleau into the boards in the third period. There was no call. And then Kadri, because he lost control, slams DeBrusk with his stick and goes head high, and that was it. I just think that you don't know, and we won't know for a few years, the ramifications of whether those calls had been made, whether he would have lost his cool, or what his future in Toronto would have been had he not done that stupid act. But he did, and
that was the breaking point. They definitely were tired of having to deal with playing without him for those kinds of reasons, not injury. That was the breaking point.
I agree.
Yeah, that was definitely it. There's no question about it. And then that's also the way they kind of justified making that trade too.
Yep. And
make that trade anyway, and they also used it. They used no question.
And look, right now the trade looks great, but if Kadri loses his cool in the playoffs and he's suspended for the rest of the playoffs, whenever that is, Colorado's going to be mad.
And some people thought there was a chance that the Leafs would sign Barry to an extension, but I never thought that was realistic, because I knew of the 2 defensemen that they had traded for, Muzzin and Barry, that Muzzin was the guy that they were going to re-sign because he'd won cups before. He was a bigger guy, a team leader type. Barry is more of what they have right now. I'm not saying that Liljegren or Sandin will be as good as Tyson Barrie.
I think he's less of what they have right now. He is so bad defensively, Tyson Barrie.
Well, no, I'm thinking about the offensive aspect.
No, I know, but I'm just saying it. I don't think people were keeping it real enough, understanding the kind of player Barry was. And I think the reason that was the case is I think he was partially hidden in Colorado. So we would only hear about the offense, but you wouldn't see the lack of defense until all of a sudden he's in a big market. And then you realize, oh yeah.
I think he's a smarter player than Jake Gardiner. He doesn't make as many lack of hockey IQ mistakes, but he is a right-handed Jake Gardiner in a way. So
I mean, my big thing on Barry was, when you saw him play, you just were just amazed. When you saw him skate, he's such a good skater. You're just up to think that he's got skill and talent. And then, but I remember sitting next to Adrian Dater at a Flyers Avalanche game, and way back when Barry was getting going, Duchesne was still on the Avalanche, and him just saying that Barry was just like so crazy inconsistent. And just to the point where he said that, there are games where Barry disappears completely and you just wonder what the heck's going on. And then he'll make, a bad defensive play, and that'll cost his confidence. Then he will stop taking rushes. And if he's not taking rushes, he's not really doing anything.
Right.
It was definitely there. You could see it. You could see it for sure.
Here's something else we can't explain. And maybe this is a choke factor. Mike, 2 years ago, 17-18, Barry had 14 goals on 178 shots in 68 games. In 70 games this year, he had 169 shots and only 5 goals. How the hell was the puck not going in for him?
He didn't score a goal while Mike Babcock was coach.
Right. So do you think there was a choke factor?
No, I think it was the fact that he was not put on the first power play, and because of his lack of
how long was he put on the first power play after Babcock?
The first game.
No, but how many games do you think that was?
I think it was mid-November, so it's about the 25-30 game mark. So he scored all 5 goals in 40 games, most of his points. I think he had 4 assists in the first 27 or 28 games. So
yeah, he racked up assists. There's no doubt.
No, he's great on the power play. I think in terms of rushing the puck, he's very good. It's just having him as a matchup defenseman. He's not big. He's not particularly strong. He's a puck carrier. So you can't put him in those shutdown situations and expect him to succeed. Like you said, Colorado hid him successfully. Sometimes they played him with Eric Johnson. Sometimes they played him with Zadorov. It was like somebody who could cover for him defensively, and the Leafs don't have that type of defense. They need 3 of those defensemen right now with their core. So, I mean, somebody, I think it was Steve Simmons asked the question on his column yesterday was how much has Barry cost himself in free agency with the year that he's had. I don't think he's getting anywhere close to $8 million. He's probably going to get around 6, but it's not going to be from Toronto.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay.
All right, we'll do a couple games. I'm not going to do all of them for the weekend yet because I thought I would do some today, some more tomorrow, and stuff like that. I mean, no games are every night. But let's start with Friday night's games. Remember the big news, the big story was Austin Matthews' injury, and what was going on with that. He did indeed play Friday night, which is really surprising because I wasn't thinking he was going to. He didn't take place in the morning skate, but he did indeed play Friday night. And not only did he play,
can you skate with a crutch?
Yeah, no, I mean the building was electric when he skated onto the ice. Obviously, he took warm-ups. There was like, he's taking warm-ups, but probably won't play. Building was electric for sure. He gets out there and just and actually took over for a while. That was the fun thing. He was playing pissed off definitely worked for him big time. He made some. So I'm trying to bring up my actual box score here that I had, but he actually. So Matthews gave them a 2-0 lead early. He scored the first 2 goals. Lightning scored 2 goals to tie it at the end of the first. By the end of the first period, Stamkos scored 2 in the third, kind of matching. And then Matthews scores his hat trick. So it was 4-3 Lightning going into the third. And then Marner gets 1 and Tavares gets 1, and that's how it ends. It ends with the Maple Leafs winning 5-4.
So the Leafs win the first 2 in Tampa.
Yeah, no, they're in Toronto, right?
No,
Tampa. They'd be in Tampa.
I'm sorry, in Tampa. Yes, in Tampa. Right, in Tampa. Sorry, I apologize. That was that. I was in the right building.
So they won the first 2 on the road.
They won the first 2 on the road in Tampa. And there's all sorts of questions coming up now, and we'll see how this plays.
I think the first one is how much money did FanDuel make off of that?
Oh yeah, tons. Absolutely tons. No question.
Air Canada flights to Tampa have increased by double.
All right. Then Philly. The game 2 in the Flyers-Penguins series. Remember the Penguins won the first game, and this one was and Carter Hart struggled a little bit. This game, Carter Hart was very on. He was on from the beginning of the game on. Flyers scored. Justin Braun actually gets a goal.
Justin Braun, sure he does.
Justin Braun, he scores on the point, and even honestly, he scored
from the point, no less.
He scored a goal on against.
What was he doing on the point?
No, but this is just. I know he like circling back, takes the shot.
Okay, all right.
He's back there, and if you remember, Justin Braun scored a goal against the Penguins in the regular season this year. For the Flyers.
Yeah, that was very memorable.
Yeah, well, he did. So
that was his 1 goal.
1-0 going into the third for the Flyers. The Penguins didn't take long to tie it and then take the lead 2-1 in the third. Both goals by Crosby.
Oh, he had 3 goals. Sorry.
Yeah, second goal by Crosby was really a beautiful, like 2-1 with Malkin back and forth. Like Malkin had a wide open net. We don't know why he passed it, but he passed it back to Crosby, and Crosby still scored. So that was one of those plays. 2-1. Konechny ties it at 2. We go to overtime, which was kind of exciting because there's nothing like playoff overtime. And sure enough, Claude Giroux in like 3 minutes into the first overtime, and the Flyers have tied the series at 1. That's that one. All right.
I'm shocked.
What? It's a 1-1 series right now. And then the Vegas Knights and the Nashville Predators. You remember the Predators were shut out in the first game by Marc-Andre Fleury of the series. And the Predators, again, couldn't get out of the way. We're shut out again. 2-0 in this one. So 3-0 and 2-0.
Actually, Eck, just so you know,
yeah,
the last time I could find that Claude Giroux won a playoff game with an overtime goal was 2010.
There you go. So that's going to be that. I'm sure that's a story they were writing.
Well, tonight they're playing Game 6 of 2010.
There you go. That's probably it. So there you have it. So
On TV.
They're writing. And then there was another game played on Friday night.
Clutch players.
Because of scheduling, for some reason, in Boston, they had to play the second game of the Islanders-Bruins series on back-to-back nights on Thursday. And
Taylor Swift concert.
Was Grice in that?
It was an Aerosmith concert.
was Grice in that?
No. Yeah, no. Grice is still no. Grice is not in net for the Islanders.
Okay.
No. They're still going with Varlamov at this point.
Okay.
Remember the Bruins won Game 1 in overtime. This game again would go to overtime. And this was like your two of the 4 overtime games were overtime games. And this one would be again won by the Bruins, again by Bergeron, who scored for the second straight game in overtime to win it. So the Bruins take their 2-0 lead.
That guy never comes up clutch, does he?
Yeah, he's big. And that's where I'll leave you for now. I'll have more for you tomorrow for sure. But now we have this series, the couple series are tied. I've got Saturdays, and then there was only one game played on Easter, so it'll be quicker. And then we're back on Monday. So tonight's game. So we'll catch up little bit by little bit here, but I didn't want to give you too many at once, kind of keep you wanting more. So there you have it. That's where we are right now for that.
Yeah, remember tomorrow we have Eric Stevens and Lisa Dillman coming on to talk about basically all the West Coast hockey. That is the entire West Coast, that they have the entire West Coast covered.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about two of the best. Yeah, Lisa's awesome.
And I have to say, two of the more interesting teams around the deadline were the Ducks and the Kings because of all the, those teams. They followed the Agello plan. They dumped. They didn't tank, but they sold they sold more than just their rentals. I mean, Bob Murray traded, guys with term on contracts. Kasha with term. Richie had years left in terms of being retained. They made actual hockey deals as well as rental deals. So it'll be interesting to talk to them about those deals.
Oh yeah, for sure. I also played a game this morning on here. People wanted me to play the all-time Flyers, all-time Penguins rematch because when the initial played, the Penguins won the game.
Yeah, under protest.
No, the Penguins won the first game. So people were like, "Oh, we need a rematch." It was a quick game. The Penguins won this one too, 3-0 this time. Although
how is that possible?
The Flyers outshot the Penguins drastically. It's on here. You can watch the game. It's on there to stream it. And Marc-Andre Fleury was in goal for this one. Barrasso played Game 1 in this series, so Fleury was in for this one. And Marc-Andre Fleury was ridiculous in this game. So it was just it's worth watching though. It's a lot of fun.
There's a story that we didn't get to cover. Greg Wyshynski had interviewed Brian Burke about when Joe Thornton was being traded. He was the Anaheim GM, and he was trying to acquire Thornton from Boston. Mike O'Connell was the GM there, and Burke said that he went and basically protected like 3 or 4 players. Originally it was going to be 5, but then I think it went down to 4. And then O'Connell could pick the rest of the guys off the roster, and they'd work out a trade. And O'Connell basically said that never happened. So then Burke later in the day re-upped it and said, well, it's a shame because Mike and I used to be friends, and he's basically calling me a liar now. and what Burke said was what Mike didn't know is Bob Murray was in the room with me.
Yeah, he was his assistant GM. So
right.
You know that, right? He was listening in on the call. So this was a very interesting thing, and I think Mike O'Connell was trying to save his reputation, whatever was left of it, because of trading Joe Thornton and not getting the most for him, because we've all looked at that trade and said, yeah, it didn't turn out well. Now, we also understand it wasn't working out for Joe in Boston either. Like, we get it. He had to go because it's just not going to go in a good place.
But the complaint about that deal, at least after the fact, has always been, hell, if I would have known Joe Thornton was available, I would have offered more than that. And the deal was Marco Sturm, Brad Stewart, and Wayne Primo. for a guy who was a number one center for another dozen years in San Jose. So I mean, it looks terrible for O'Connell. I think it is a statement on his quality as a general manager. And now I think he looks like even bigger fool because Burke outed him in terms of like, oh yeah, you may be trying to defend your reputation, but don't defend it with a lie. Because
the Brew. I remember that it was so funny that I remember this trade so well happening. I remember where I was. I remember talking to people about it at the time, and it's interesting. I really, at the time, you got to remember what was happening with Thornton in Boston too. Like that's something. It was not Joe Thornton that we see now. Like this is not the Joe Thornton. Thornton in Boston was a disaster. And the reason Thornton in Boston was a disaster was because Joe Thornton was like kind of like, if people can remember, if Flyers fans remember, like Jeff Carter early days in Philly, where you have this big guy who won't go to the net,
right?
Plays on the perimeter, and you're a big bad Bruin. Okay, so you're a Bruin guy. A Bruin that's that size is getting booed out of the arena. Like that
didn't have great playoff numbers either.
Well, that's what was happening. He was getting booed out of the arena because he was just this. They weren't going on. He was a great perimeter skilled player on the outside. That wasn't the case.
And there's a mitigating factor to that because the last playoff series that Thornton played was against Montreal in 2004. The Bruins lost in 7 games. And I can't remember specifically what it was. I think it was a broken jaw or a broken wrist. He had an injury throughout that series, and there was a lot of criticism of Thornton for basically playing on the periphery, like you're talking about, Ak. And it was based on the fact that he was injured and he took a bunch of heat. And then obviously the year after was the year that was the lockout season or the season
of heat. Like I mean, and it's like I remember because Philly and Boston, similar kinds of towns, and I remember feeling the same thing about Thornton. I was at that point, he was obviously had skills. You could see he made some good plays, but he really reminded me of of the kind of player that in Philly would have gotten booed out of the arena too. Like that was the case, and it's unfortunate, but it's just he wasn't appreciated for what he was in Boston, and
right.
So that trade, even though it was insane, and looking back, and this is a Hall of Famer and all that, it's really you gotta throw it into perspective of the time.
Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Oh, go ahead. You do it. We're talking with Thornton to have another signing, actually.
Okay, we're talking about Thornton in his prime. After he got traded from Boston that year, he had 92 points in 58 games, which almost 100 points in.
Oh, I know.
And then
he still was an all-star in Boston. It's not like he was a bad player. It's just a lot of people felt like what Ek just said. And also, even I was saying at that time, he wasn't a clutch player.
He wasn't a clutch player. He seemed soft. He was like, there's some players' personalities in some cities. It's like, in Philly, it kind of reminded me of like Donovan McNabb in Philly.
Yep.
Where you have the guy who was he was laughing a lot. He was smiling a lot. When things weren't going well, and that kind of like McNabb did that in Philly, and it really pissed people off here. And it wasn't fair. It's his personality. It's the way he deals with pressure or whatever. That's what he does.
No, there were guys that smirk. There was a pitcher for the Mets, a reliever, John Franco, who is beloved by the fan base now. But in key times when he would give up like a bad home run, he'd be a closer. He would have this smirk, and people would think like he's not taking it seriously. And it's like, no, this is just like a nervous reaction that guys get.
People get really angry. And it just this is also. You're also talking about a time period when sports talk radio was launching.
Oh yeah.
And so in Boston, they were talking about this all the time, and it was just, there was no question that there was a feeling around the league that, that Thornton wasn't going to be in Boston for very long. It was not unexpected. And there were a lot of, and there's such a small, the NHL is such a small thing that reputation, because we always say that players can get a 1-sentence line about them sometimes. Thornton's 1-sentence line was that he's soft and doesn't care. That was he's skilled, but he's soft and he doesn't care. That's what people would say about him. So all the other, DeBerkey, sits there and Burke, that in a way, it's not surprising that Burke went for him, because Burke loved reclamation projects. That's what he did. That's what he would do. And he would go after a guy and try to he wouldn't believe that. Burke doesn't believe that one line thing, but a lot of GMs do.
Yeah, but that was an opportunity to buy low on a former number 1 overall pick, and that's why I think Burke realized the true value of Thornton, and that would have been the type of deal
he was going to give up some talent,
right? I mean, we're talking about when we're talking about what 06, So one of the 5 or 6 players not even one of the 5 or 6 players, one of the prospects could have been Corey Perry or Ryan Getzlaf.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. No, it was probably, I mean, Burke probably would have given up more for him too, but that was the other, and also
I think that was the point why Burke brought it up, is because he was sort of dumbfounded that they didn't want to deal with him.
But also
that they dealt in a vacuum.
I don't know.
Talk to Doug Wilson.
But there's another thing that goes into this too, and that is that Burke's had a reputation in Boston too, that he was a good GM, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they were afraid to make a trade with him.
Maybe
they thought, because he was Burke's also a Boston guy too. Like, so the other concept of that, like if we trade him to Burke and he turns out to be good, then.
But I mean, he still got taken in the other deal anyhow.
Oh, he got taken, but Doug Wilson was still like a relatively new GM,
right?
At that time, and he was an ex-player. He wasn't Brian Burke. He wasn't from Boston. It's like there's a lot of things. Boston's is one of these tough towns,
Yeah, and the whole reason, I mean, the deal that Burke made with Boston a few years later, he traded for another enigmatic type of player who didn't fit with the Boston market, and really didn't fit in the Toronto market either, because it drove Leaf fans crazy that Phil Kessel was this aloof sort of guy. When look at the players that are legends in Toronto over, say, the last 30, 35, 40 years. Wendell Clark, who would go through a wall for you. Gary Roberts, Darcy Tucker. Those are the type of players that Leaf fans gravitate towards. They don't gravitate towards the enigmatic Phil Kessel. Or
right.
I'll give you a quick Wilson story, and this is why I think it is easy to deal with him. So when the Stanley Cup was in Boston and San Jose was playing them, Pittsburgh, when they were playing Pittsburgh, there was, media day, but before media day, you would talk to, the brass. And so it was time for the San Jose press conference. And a lot of us didn't know where the hell it was. And Kevin Allen and I are like running to make it. And then we caught up to like Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson he looks at me and he goes, "Don't worry. We're not going to start the press conference without you." And I just laughed because it's like, really? Kevin Allen's right there and you're waiting for me, Doug? I appreciate that.
That's awesome. He
just made you feel good, Russ.
Yeah.
No, that's really, really awesome. No question.
That's the kind of guy he is. I mean, that's
why he's a great guy. And that's also the added, to go from Boston to San Jose for Thornton was such like a revelation in terms of mentality. Like the mentality of San Jose feeds into like Joe Thornton perfectly. Like it couldn't be more different, So it's like it's no wonder that he just thrived there. The pressure that was on in Boston, to try to be something he wasn't, was gone in San Jose. There was nobody covering the team. Like there were 25 reporters covering the Bruins. There's nobody covering the team in San Jose. It's like it was perfect for Thornton to just thrive. It just.
Well, there were a couple people. One of them worked for HockeyBuzz.
Well, there were people. Like it was the pressure was very different. Like there was no Kevin Paul DuPont there. Like the kind of thing. There's no like serious
laid back Northern California.
Northern California guys. Like
raps and
Thornton shows up at the rink with his flip flops on. Like literally, that's what he does. Like
you get a reporter from the B that shows up and
yeah. It was San
Jose Mercury News. Hey man.
Yeah, it's a very different environment. The fan base for a long time just like loved hockey and didn't really put the pressure on their players to win. That's changed, but that took a while for that to catch up. It's a great story because of what happened. I don't know. It's such like a typical like hindsight is 2020 thing to like though, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring up the scenarios at the time.
No, it's good to do that. The other signing is the same, very much in the same vein as Ian Mitchell, but not as good offensively, but really good two-way guy is Cole Hutz, who played for Penn State, another defenseman, 6'2", 195. The Kings signed him, and again, we want to talk about that Kings resurgence that's coming.
Yeah,
they're already producing defensemen every year. Like they're good at it. Cale Clegg will be the next great one for them. But Cole Hutz, now he could wait a year or two, play for Ontario, get ready, and I'm telling you, 2-3 years. It might only take 2 years for this Kings team to start showing real progress.
And what I was impressed with is the fact, okay, they're going through a rebuild right now. They traded Muzzin last season. They traded Alec Martinez this season. And it really hasn't affected the timetable of them with other teams, they would push Clegg into the NHL after they traded these guys. He's played 4 NHL games, Russ. He had 29 points last year, 25 points in 49 games this year. He's 21. He comes in next year. They haven't forced him. They haven't he hasn't gotten burned by
maturity among. There's a maturity with Kings fans that allows them to do that too. Like there's
no, but I think it's partly that act, but I also think it's the patience of a guy like Rob Blake who knows what it takes to be an NHL defenseman.
Yeah, for sure.
And Robitaille and Fuda and everybody who works for that
player development. Yeah.
I mean, covering that team when they won their first Stanley Cup, I always kind of thought as a kid watching like the Flyers go out there and play in LA that those they were not real hockey fans in California and stuff like that. Like I always had that back in my head thing. And then, but I was amazed covering them that they're like the Kings are very different than the Ducks or the Sharks in that way.
No, that fan base is much more cemented than even the other two.
1967, just like the Flyers, they've been around for a long time. They have, and they have there's a lot of people from Canada that live in the LA area. It's a really There's
also a lot of big stars that don't get the recognition like Jack Nicholson, but show up all the time at Kings games.
Hockey. The other last thing about Burke that just came to me too, I forgot to bring this up. Burke's such a weird bird in terms of I can tell you 2 players that I talked to him about in depth for for Team USA that he swore he never would, and he traded for both of them. Which was insane. He said he thought Phil Kessel was awful. I had a long discussion with him about how bad Phil Kessel was before he traded for Phil Kessel. It was 2 years later, but still, it was one of those things that every time I heard of Phil Kessel to Toronto rumor, I laughed. I'm in my head, I'm that just can't be possible. He just doesn't think Phil Kessel doesn't. He's he doesn't come back. He's a selfish player. And then Shane Van Riemsdyk was the same way. And it's fascinating. Those 2 guys that he traded for were both guys that he just did not like. They weren't his. And they're both interesting.
How could he not like him? Van Riemsdyk played on the Olympic team. How could he not?
No, he didn't. Remember,
No. He played 20.
He played on it. I was at the press. I was at the press conference.
Yeah, he played.
No, which Olympic team were you talking about though?
2010. He played on 2010.
He was on the 2010 team.
But was it the Olympic team before that?
The press conference was in Toronto, and I was there, and Van Riemsdyk was up on the panel.
I know he played. I know he played in 2010. He
was drafted in 07, so he wouldn't have been on the 06 team. But no, he. But then
I had some big discussions about that because
right.
I really thought
the funny thing with Van Riemsdyk, you got to remember that was a deal that was rumored for about 6 months, and the fact that Luke Schenn, it was already known at that point that Luke Schenn was not a bust, but not as good as people thought about it after he had his rookie year. So they got a guy who they knew was a scorer, and they knew that the Flyers were going to trade him because he didn't fit the Flyer mold of what a big guy would do. And he was a scorer and a very good scorer for the Leafs for a number of years. The Kessel deal, from what I've understood about what Burke's mindset was with the Leafs at that point, he knew that he wouldn't have the patience of Leaf fans for a number of years to go through. Now, I think that this was a miscalculation because we saw that they had the patience to go through a rebuild. That team sucked for 3 or 4 years and only bought into the rebuild the last couple years of it to get Marner and to get Austin Matthews. But his calculation was that the fan base and the media would not have the patience to go through a rebuild at that point,
right.
And he decided to trade 2 first-round picks for Phil Kessel, thinking that the improvements that they made on the blue line that summer before they made the deal was enough to make them at least a competitive team, and they were nowhere close. So that
I'm going to call you on this, Russ. He was not on the 2010 Olympic team.
He was on one of them because I was at the press.
2014. He was on 2014.
2014.
And,
okay.
But
he played with Stastny and Kessel.
But I had this discussion. That's why I was saying because I was fighting Burke about
Wasn't Burke the GM in 2014 or no?
He was the GM both times. Well, he was GM in 2010.
It was 2010.
Burke was GM in 2010, and I had this. This is why I remember this so well because I was like,
yeah.
Because what had happened is Van Riemsdyk had this unbelievable playoff run for the Flyers. Remember this? He had this
in 2010. It was after the
Olympics.
Was the GM. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Even before that, in 2009, I guess it was or whatever, he had like a great run for the Flyers in the playoffs where he was their best player by far. And
yes, I remember that.
Remember he just took over? And I had this when I was fighting with Burke, I was about Van Riemsdyk. Like I was pointing to that playoff series. I'm like, look what he did. Like you're playing in a shortened time, and he obviously shows what he can do in that shortened period of time. And he's like, no, he's a Central Jersey kid. He's stuck up. All this stuff. It's like, it's just again, it was kind of that like, Burke doesn't like entitled people, and like you can't blame somebody for where they're from. Van Riemsdyk, James Van Riemsdyk is the furthest thing from a stuck up kid. But he's a great kid and everything like that. But yeah, he
is a great guy. Eck, we got a couple of bad things to mention
before we end the show. Yeah,
before we end the show, Colby Cave, a 25-year-old prospect. Well, not so much. Well, he is still a prospect.
He was borderline NHLer, played with Boston, played with Edmonton. Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away from a brain bleed. I was kind of following his story and hoping for the best. And he did get some NHL time. He definitely had to work himself into an NHLer. I honestly don't remember him as a player. I'd like to be able to tell you more, but I can't. That's kind of sad. And then Anthony Kelsey, who's a New York photographer, age of 48, passed away. I think he had the virus.
He had the virus. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was apparently at a lot of Met games. Matt Harvey just posted something about him. He would see him at Met games. He was at MSG a lot. I didn't know him because like the Philly photographers I see all the time because they're in the same area. MSG, it's a little different, and I don't go as much. So I don't remember him from over the years, but obviously he's was at a ton of events, and it's really a shame. And there is a GoFundMe account. I put it on my Facebook page, so if people want to.
Yeah, Sean Mulaney from our Hockey Buzz writer from Edmonton has a GoFundMe account, GoFundMe thing on this as well. I'm not sure if it's the same one. There might be a couple.
Well, one's for Cossey. I don't know if the other one's for Colby Cave, but either would be a really great thing to do.
Yeah, Sean's is for Cave.
Sean's is for Cave for his family and stuff like that. I'll be putting a link up to it very shortly, and people can follow it and get.
Yeah, and I have to say, if anybody wants just to read a little bit about Colby Cave and the type of person that he was, I mean, you saw players like Torrey Krug and Connor McDavid, and teammates from Providence and from his limited time with the Bruins, and then from I think Bakersfield and the Oilers, the type of guy that he was. Check out Steve Simmons' Sunday column. He started off the column with a couple things about Colby Cave that just gave you the insight of how good of a kid he was, and it's just a tragedy that he was lost at 25 years old.
And Mike Vaccaro from the Post wrote about the photographer. If you want to read about that,
just awful.
York Post. Yep.
Right. Well, hopefully you guys out there, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully everybody had a happy and healthy Easter or Passover holidays. And you got to see your families and do what you can. I mean, the best thing right now, the saving grace about this is spending so much time with family. Is really kind of interesting. I'm kind of enjoying it. Starting to get into it. I'm really liking how much time I get to spend with my kids and how much time I'm getting to spend with my wife and all that. So hopefully you guys are getting the same kind of experience and staying safe out there. Remember, without the buzz, folks, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.